Today, we're diving into the high-stakes, multi-billion-dollar race for AI dominance. It really is the new gold rush, and it's reshaping our world. But it kind of feels like only a handful of tech giants are holding all the maps, all the shovels, and frankly, all the gold. So how did they get such an unbeatable head start? Let's break it down.
To really get a handle on just how tough this race is, let's start with a company we all know and love, Apple. A titan of technology, a giant of innovation, and yet, in the world of generative AI, a lot of people, including analysts like Gajo Sevilla, see them as playing a frantic game of catch-up.
And really, the fact that one of the world's most valuable companies is struggling so publicly, well, it perfectly sets the stage for just how difficult this new frontier really is. When you look closer, you start to see this really worrying pattern for Apple. While its competitors, OpenAI, Google, are just sprinting ahead, dropping bigger and better AI assistants left and right, Apple's big reveal of Apple Intelligence was kind of marked by delays. That huge promised revolution for Siri, pushed back. Other key features, put on hold. And this super cautious approach has analysts and investors getting pretty nervous. In a race this fast, slowing down can look a whole lot like falling behind.
And that right there is the billion-dollar question. If a company with the insane resources of Apple is struggling to keep pace, what on earth makes building this powerful, generative AI so incredibly difficult and so mind-bogglingly expensive?
Well, to answer that, we're going to turn to a really fascinating deep dive from the French Competition Authority. They laid out the massive barriers to entry that define this whole new landscape. So let's unpack the real price of admission to the AI Club.
Okay, so at its heart, generative AI is all about creation. It's about building models that don't just analyze information you give them, but can actually generate entirely new stuff. A brand new email, a photorealistic image, even a piece of music. But that act of creation, it's built on a foundation of just immense scale.
Building one of these things really happens in two major steps. First, you have training. This is the brutal upfront work where a foundation model just chews through colossal amounts of data to learn. It's a massive, one-time investment of computing power. But the costs don't stop there. The second phase is inference, and this happens every single time a user asks a question or generates an image. Unlike, say, a social media app where adding another user costs basically nothing, every single AI query costs real money because it takes a ton of computing power to run.
So how much are we talking about for that initial training phase? Well, according to some pretty solid estimates, training just one model, OpenAI's GPT-4, cost over $78 million. Think about that for a second. That's not for a year of research. That's for a single training run of a single model.
And when you see numbers like that, it's really no surprise that the investment world has gone absolutely bonkers for AI. The market jumped from just over $4 billion in 2022 to more than $22 billion in 2023. That is more than a five-fold increase in just 1 year. It's a textbook gold rush.
But here's the thing about this gold rush. You can't just show up with a pickaxe and a dream. To even get in the game, you need three incredibly expensive and scarce resources. First, massive compute power. We're talking specialized chips like GPUs. Second, vast, almost unimaginable quantities of high-quality data. And third, the rare, highly specialized human talent that actually knows how to build these complex systems.
This all fits into what experts call a value chain. And think of it like a pyramid. At the very bottom, that foundational infrastructure layer, you've got those three keys we just talked about: compute power, data, and skilled people. Everything else in the entire AI industry, the models, the apps, all of it, gets built on top of that foundation. So if you control the foundation, well, you control the whole game. Which brings us right to the heart of the matter. If the price of admission is owning that entire foundation, how on earth did a select few tech giants manage to build and control it so far ahead of everyone else? First up, compute power. And honestly, the tech giants have a virtual stranglehold here. They have the cash to just gobble up specialized GPUs from companies like NVIDIA in huge quantities, locking in the best deals. But they're not just buying chips, they're building their own. Google has its TPUs, Amazon has Trainium, custom-made hardware for their AI. And on top of all that, they already run the world's biggest cloud platforms, which for most smaller companies is the only way to access this kind of power in the first place.
Next up is data. And this is where their advantage might be even more insane. They are sitting on mountains of proprietary data from their billions of users. Think about it. Every single Google search, every YouTube video watched, every line of code on Microsoft's GitHub. And they have the financial muscle to buy even more data, like Google's reported $60 million a year deal with Reddit. This creates this incredibly powerful feedback loop. More users means more data, which means better AI models, which of course attracts even more users.
And their third big advantage? Well, they use their deep pockets to play the whole field. It's not just about hiring the smartest engineers. They invest in a whole web of promising AI startups. This gives them early access to brand new research and lets them absorb the best talent and technology from all across the industry.
So what does all this add up to? You get these deeply entrenched, vertically integrated ecosystems. Companies like Google and Microsoft control pretty much every single layer of that value chain we talked about, from the custom chips all the way up to the apps on your phone. It's why you see their AI tools getting integrated directly into products you already use every day, like Copilot popping up in Microsoft Office or AI answers right at the top of your Google search. It just makes their services stickier and boxes out any potential competitors.
With so much power concentrated in the hands of so few, it was really only a matter of time before the referees showed up. Regulators around the world are now stepping in, looking at this landscape, and starting to ask some tough questions about whether the game is being played fairly.
Competition authorities have identified a pretty clear set of risks. They're worried about things like cloud lock-in, where they give startups tons of free cloud credits to get them hooked on their platform. They're looking at exclusive data deals that shut out rivals. They're scrutinizing talent poaching, like when Microsoft basically hired the entire staff of the startup Inflection AI. And they're really concerned about self-preferencing, using their dominance in, say, search or operating systems to give their own AI tools an unfair advantage.
So what's their game plan to fix this? Well, the regulator's playbook focuses on a few key areas. They're looking to enforce existing laws, like Europe's Digital Markets Act, way more aggressively. They're demanding more transparency on that tangled web of investments and partnerships that the tech giants are weaving. And they're even exploring ways to create real alternatives, like funding public supercomputers to give researchers and smaller companies the compute power they so desperately need.
And that brings us to the critical question, right? On one hand, you have a handful of tech titans with what seems like an insurmountable head start, built on decades of dominance. And on the other, you have regulators trying to make sure the field stays open for new ideas and new players. The real question is, can regulation actually level a playing field that's already this tilted? Or have the giants already won the AI gold rush before most of us even knew it had started?